Amit Pradhan is the president of the Silicon Valley Blockchain Society and is a well-known entrepreneur, investor, and speaker in the AI and blockchain world. He's also chairman of Rainfall. So welcome, Amit. Great to see you this morning.
Oh, thank you, Jane. It's lovely to be here.
So let's start with your work with Rainfall. Tell me about that. What's going on there?
Yeah, so Rainfall is this initiative to help people regain data self-sovereignty and effectively be able to control the privacy of their data at a time when, obviously our privacy is under significant amounts of assault, but more importantly, to be able to monetize that sovereignty, that control, that agency over data in a fair, equitable way, eventually creating what we call a universal earned income or a daily income that comes not from taxes or governments, but comes from earning income from the data that you choose to share in a privacy preserving manner.
Okay. So I love this idea because I feel like we are giving so much of our data, our valuable data to Facebook or Google or whatever. And they have become the biggest companies in the world, maybe in history. I think it would factored in for everything based on that. So people getting a little bit of a dividend for their own personal data is an important way to kind of, democratize things. And that's somebody's data. So that's got value.
Absolutely. And you want to do it in a model that doesn't create the same cycle again. So the idea is not to create yet another company that becomes another Google down the road where, instead of Google and Apple and Facebook and the other big tech companies, you need to add Rainfall to that list. And so the DNA was to do it in a way that leverages the idea of decentralization so that the data always remains in the agency and control of the individual. And that's the whole idea behind self-sovereignty of that data. But the intelligence that can be gleaned from this data across millions and millions of users with common connected context is valuable to buyers. And in many ways, the evolution of the value is how do you move from just targeted advertising, which compromises your privacy because the advertiser knows who you are, your device ID. The idea is how do you create intelligence that is real time to them? What are trends? Where are people moving? Who's going to go past a certain coffee shop, or so on and so forth? And how do you extract value from that to the business, but transfer the value back to where the data came from rather than the platform that now has the ability to control all of this data.
Right. Well, and you said the key word there, decentralization. So that is, really what blockchain is based on is kind of this shared society where everybody has an interest in keeping it transparent. So tell me about, so you're the president of the Silicon Valley Blockchain Society. Talk to me about, like, in a macro sense, where do you see this industry right now?
Yeah, it's at an interesting inflection point because most of the time, the conversations have always been dominated by the currency side or the asset side. And so there's a lot of interest when Bitcoin hits 60,000 or now again 50,000. It's an equal amount of interest, but from a negative perspective, when it drops down to 30,000 and the volatility of the asset space tends to consume all of the narrative, the investments tend to all go into that second layer, which is the infrastructure. And so you start seeing more and more protocol level plays. We've always talked about Ethereum. You talk about Cardano and Solana and Tezos, and there's a list of these infrastructure plays and everything around that. The part that often doesn't get addressed is let's just say the philosophical or the DNA underpinnings of decentralization. Where does it actually affect the lives of billions of people around the world? Like with the example we spoke of with Rainfall, we're leveraging the power of edge-based AI and decentralization to be able to create daily income for people around the world. In the same way, what are the other use cases where we can create a tangible difference to the society that is more equitable, creates more opportunity for return? And a lot of the investments that need to go into those kind of opportunities must have a long-term lens, can't always have this trader lens of saying, what can I do with the arbitrage from the price of Bitcoin or the price of the other dominant cryptos? And Silicon Valley Blockchain Society was created to bring long-term thoughtful capital, institutional to, even angel investors to be able to deploy in these long-term opportunities. So from a macro perspective, we have transitioned from a lot of excitement in the infrastructure layer, which will absolutely continue, to a big evolution on the asset side. And so we're making the transition from conversations only about Bitcoin to a lot of the other assets in the space. Decentralized finance is bringing even more capital into the space. It's bringing a lot of pressure on the banks. But we're starting to see a lot of mainstream institutional capital start to play in this space.
So fascinating. I appreciate your thoughts and your insight on this. And I look forward to another conversation at some point in the future.